Big news from the Citizens. They've decided to take the decision to part ways with Gareth Taylor. Obviously, we were due to preview the Man City-Chelsea game, the Subway League Cup final this Saturday. I mean, what do we make of the kind of timing of this? This is what... I mean, you've got your arms crossed.
I've got my arms crossed.
You're not happy.
I'm not.
You're not happy at all.
Look, we were going to talk about how Chelsea and Manchester City would prepare for this game. Now we have to talk about how are we going to prepare for this section of the podcast, Chloe. Nice. We need to throw all of our notes out.
But we are also first to it.
We are. Yes. Timing, very bizarre. This is City's chance to potentially win maybe the only silverware of the season. Now look, that's not to say that they're not going to win the other trophies, but like it's the first thing that's come along. It could really like rejuvenate your season. Feels a bit like pulling the rug out from underneath them a little bit.
Just 2 months from the end of the season.
Well, one thing you didn't add in, Chloe, was who is stepping in into the interim role.
Who would anyone think it would be? Before we actually drop who it is, please tell us who you thought it might be.
The last person.
Nick Cushing.
Imagine swinging back in and being like, hey guys.
Remember me?
Remember me?
Remember me from the glory days of Citizens bygone. Speaking of Taylor's departure, Managing Director Charlotte O'Neill said Manchester City prides itself on competing at the top of the WSL and on its outstanding record of qualifying for the European competition. Unfortunately, results this season have so far not reached this very high standard. With 6 games of the WSL campaign remaining, we believe that a change of management will breathe fresh life into our bid to ensure qualification for the 2025-26 UEFA Women's Champions League. We would like to place on record our thanks to Gareth for all of his efforts during this many years at City. Our FA Cup and League Cup triumphs will remain special moments in the history of this football club. We wish him all the very best for the future. That's nice. That's a nice end.
It feels a little bit savage in that I thought maybe he'd go at the end of the season if they didn't win anything. But like, I feel like he has some pretty decent excuses this season in terms of the key players and injuries that they've dealt with.
He's had his hands tied behind his back to some extent.
And I would not want to be Nick Cushing walking in and being like, right, so, you know, what's the first job of the day? Just the League Cup final. All right, who are we playing? Chelsea. And then what? Champions League. Who are we playing? Chelsea. And then we've got a league game. Oh, who are we playing? Chelsea. I'd be like,
guess the next one.
Oh my God, this is Groundhog Day. Yeah, so it's quite a big job on his hands, I think, for Nick Cushing.
A bloody little. I think, why do we think this has happened now? Because for me, it feels like we are 2 months out from the end of the season. Like you said, just about to go into a final, just about to go into some of the hardest games that they'll play all season and the hardest bits of the Champions League. It kind of feels like, why would you do this now?
The timing I'm struggling with.
City were, really languishing in a really awful place and not produce any brilliant football. That for me feels baffling and also so unsettling for the players. When you think about the position they're being put into, it just doesn't make any sense.
I mean, I know we talked about like Champions League qualification looking more difficult after dropping points to West Ham, but they are only 1 point behind Arsenal. It does feel like Arsenal's wheels are wobbling a little bit, so it doesn't seem completely outside the realms of possibility that they could actually make Champions League football this season. I'm struggling with the timing side of things just because it's so unsettling ahead of a very important game. That being said, Chloe, do you know who it's going to be difficult for?
Go on.
A little bit?
Go on.
Chelsea. They're not going to know what's Nick Cushing going to do when he comes. Is he going to come in and be like, look, we'll stick to the game plan that we had? Or is he going to come in and go, I'm going to try my way. I'm going to do this. I want to try that. Does it make it a little bit, and I'm not saying this is a reasoning, but I just think it's interesting in terms of Chelsea prep. I can imagine them going, what the fuck?
It would be bold of Nick Cushing to come in and completely regenerate the way that Man City play with 4 days to do so. 4 days. And that's on the basis that he has all day tomorrow. Tomorrow is probably, we normally had a rest day on a Tuesday.
Hi, my name's Nick. Remember me? Yeah, there's going to be a lot of that. Surely.
A rest day would normally happen on Tuesday. So maybe you've had the rehab day from Monday. That would be today. They'd be doing nothing but ice pass and some very light running. Tuesday would be recovery day. You'd have Wednesday, Thursday and Friday at best.
If they had lost the League Cup final, maybe that would have made more sense to go, we're parting ways.
Can you imagine if they win silverware at the weekend and Taylor's been fired?
I just
fuming.
The timing's really weird. So I do feel a little bit for Gareth in that respect in terms of the stuff they've had to deal with.
That is savage.
The nature of losing the league last year would have been a sickener, and the way things are going this year are really tough. It's bold. It's very bold. And I think March Madness, what a time to pull the rug out.
Bold or risky?
Mm.
Both. Man City, I'm a fairly reasonable person. Man City are 12 points behind Chelsea in the WSL. They should be doing better. But they're, like I said, nowhere near languishing, nowhere near absolute failure this year. Taylor's been in charge since 2020. It's less than 24 hours after they progressed to the semi-final of the FA Cup.
Again, the timing has baffled me a little bit. And that, look, I don't want to come out and be like, oh, Manchester City have had a great season, or the only reason they're doing badly is because of the injuries. I'm not saying that. I do think they've struggled. I have said it before that they struggle to adapt. I was at the Spurs game. I was at the West Ham game. They weren't looking their best. They still beat Spurs. They got a point out of the West Ham game. Won at the weekend. Still not playing their best football. But I would argue no one is really foot to the floor playing some top quality football in this league. But the difference is your Chelseas are still winning games. So yeah, interesting decision. Nick Cushing had a relatively rough time in New York City FC with a 34% win record.
Gosh, I can see where they brought him in.
But arguably, if you want to bring in someone, I guess, who knows the setup, The
setup from what? A decade ago?
A long time ago. He was at Manchester City until 2020.
It feels like a decade.
Yeah, it's
half
a while ago. But yeah, I think the timing's the thing that throws me. I'll be interested to have a look at fans' reactions. Maybe they feel it is good timing. Maybe they feel.
I don't feel like anyone was calling for Gareth Taylor's head. I know there's been moments of it maybe throughout the season that he's not been getting the best out of his players, but I don't think anyone. It wasn't like we've seen really rampant periods with like Mark Skinner or with Jonas Eidevall. We haven't seen like people go absolutely hell for leather for Gareth Taylor's job.
I do feel like because when the wheels came off City's league a little bit, it was when they were suffering injuries, and I think people kind of could forgive for that. Yeah. And I think when they played the way they played against Barcelona, the first time, they know what they had in the tank and they knew what they could do when all things went right. So, I don't know. I'm a little bit blown away.
Pending. And it's really hard actually to kind of gauge the fan reaction at the moment because the news is so fresh. It's literally just dropped like 20 seconds ago.
My prediction now was going to change because I thought maybe Man City would edge it purely because, get your hands on a trophy. Finally, it's been a long time since you've had a trophy.
Don't give us your predictions.
I'm not, but it's just thrown me off entirely in terms of how they're going to.
You're unsettled.
Set up and how they're going to perform. But, these girls are all super professional. I'm sure many of them have experienced a manager going mid-season. But yeah, it's really interesting.
You actually look quite unsettled.
I just don't know. I'm really surprised.
Your face is the kind of face that I imagine Bunny Shaw having right now, like that vibe.
But I just can't believe we're in March just. That's 3 managers gone in the WSL already.
Jesus Christ.
It's a lot, isn't it?
Cull. Right, let's touch then on the games upcoming. Chelsea and Man City last met in the League Cup final back in 2022 when City beat Chelsea 3-1 at Plough Lane. That was actually the last trophy that Taylor won. It would be so tragic if they won it this weekend and he wasn't there to see them do that again. Why?
It was the pitch was so dark.
I'm so sick and tired. I'm so sick and tired of every memory that you have of like iconic games being like, and the weather was so cold.
It plays a big impact.
And the rain, it was raining.
My lens broke.
Dogs that weekend.
My chair broke.
I remember it so well. I remember there was a pigeon that briefly landed before being swept away by the wind.
It was a goose at Brighton.
Honest to God. Like, I'm sitting there up in my fancy little box, obviously drinking champagne.
Worrying you're going to run out of champagne.
What a great goal. What a lovely run of passage that was. But you're there on the front lines. I'll give you that. You're on the front lines.
I am,
in your cagoule, dripping wet. And those are the things that you remember. I just think, do you look back in 40 years' time when we're, living our best life in a retirement villa in, I actually don't know. I don't know where I'd want to be. Hopefully with you guys, just me, you, Soph, and
granny flat.
Yeah, granny flat somewhere. I'll have an annex. Looking back on these memories, and you'll be able to tell me about what the weather was like at one of the cup finals. Yeah.
Do you know what it reminds me of? And I don't know if our listeners ever watch Father Ted. But Dougal. And there's an episode where Ted is describing the craziest day they'd had, and he was trying to get Dougal to remember it. And there was a helicopter, and there was a fire, and there was an explosion, and Dougal just could not remember the day. And then he said, "You were wearing your red jumper," and Dougal was like, "Oh yeah, that's me."
That's the kind of conversation we'll have in 30 years' time, Ram. Do you remember the Euros? London.
Chloe Kelly.
Wembley, 2022. Wembley, they won. We went absolutely wild. I took forever to get from the podcast. It was a mad match. And you were like, Oh yeah, but the weather was grand.
It was actually. Grand old stretch in the evening.
Anyway, back to the games. Like I said, obviously the big match up this weekend in the Subway League Cup final. Chelsea and Man City are playing each other relentlessly 45 times in this March. How do we think they're both going to fare? Do we think the Taylor situation is going to really impact Man City's chances of walking away with a bit of silverware? Do we think Chelsea are going to attack when they're most vulnerable?
The Taylor situation has really knocked me in terms of how I think Man City are going to do in these next 4 games. Like, I genuinely don't. It's almost like I need to see a game to get an idea of how the team are dealing with it. And it's just a shame that the game that they're going to have to deal with it in the first time is a bloody opportunity for a trophy, the Subway League Cup. So yeah, really hard to tell. Arguably, Chelsea mentality monsters. You know, they've got winners in that squad. I can see them absolutely going for it. But equally, you know, we've seen new manager bounce. We've seen teams rise to the occasion. We've seen teams rise to these challenges and kind of do the unexpected. So it just makes it really hard. I thought I was going to give it to Man City. I do wonder now whether Chelsea can kind of capitalise on the disruption.
I do think that there is something about a squad facing adversity where they sort of like dig deeper. They dig deeper for each other because like they're all going through something. It's like, I suppose, similar to Liverpool, I suppose, in the last couple of games, and like what they did with Arsenal on Sunday.
Should I stick to my original prediction and then if it comes true, I look amazing?
Yeah.
I was going to say Man City 2-1.
Yeah. I'll go Chelsea the other way.
Okay.
Yeah, you're sweet. Yeah, it kind of feels like very similar to what Liverpool have done with their new manager at the moment. Kind of new manager bounce, facing some adversity. Probably didn't see Matt Beard leaving. And then obviously caused a bit of an upset at the weekend. Do we kind of think that... I kind of feel like players really want to kind of prove to people that they're okay, like they're fine, that no matter what's going on behind the scenes, that they're going to ride this out. A little bit like what's going on at Man United, actually. Doesn't matter every single weekend. The ownership is telling you that you don't matter, but you go out and you perform and you get second in the table, and that's what you do. You grind.
Well, look, it's funny because beforehand, one of the things we were going to touch on was the Gareth Taylor link to Angel City job and how that had been poo-pooed and all that kind of stuff. And now you're like, well, maybe that is where he's going.
Okay, well, we will wait and see, and also take a very long, hard look at Gareth Taylor's flight plans for the next couple of weeks, because if we see any hint of Gareth Taylor heading to Heathrow or Gatwick, it might be Angel City.
He's in Manchester. Why would he be going there?
Well, no, it's cheaper flights from London.
Right, yeah, but then you add in the £200 it costs to get down here on the train.
Well, I'm assuming that he's got quite a nice redundancy package.
Oh.
Yeah, and Angel City, I think, they're going to pay, aren't they? I mean, they're not, they'll put their hands in their pockets for a £200 ticket to London.
Still extortionate.
Yeah, for the average person, yeah, not for the Angel City investors. I think they'll be fine.